a podcast about amazing people from an incredible state. Amazing Arizonans with Mike Broomhead.
Joining me in studio is former Governor Doug Ducey. First of all, welcome.
Good to be here, Mike.
It's nice to see you casual.
Good to be back. This is the first time I've ever driven myself here.
Really?
I had a tough time finding it.
That's going to be a part of this. I want to talk about all that time as governor, but I've been privileged to know you since before you were the state treasurer. Your story has always been compelling to me because you've always been so invested in the community, the Thunderbirds, and all the charitable things you did. What was it about your life that motivated you from your beginnings at ASU to Cold Stone Creamery? What motivated you into public service?
Well, I would say I came from a family of service. My dad was a cop, and on the side of his car that he would park in our driveway and kind of come up behind my brother and I and turn on the flashers and scare all our buddies in grade school. It said to protect and serve. So that was definitely something that was part of my youth and something I had a lot of affection for. But I would say it was more, my journey was more of an entrepreneurial journey. I went into business, started my career at Procter & Gamble. We began Cold Stone Creamery here in Tempe, Arizona, on the southwest corner of Southern and McClintock. So it was really post Cold Stone. It was selling Cold Stone really at an early age, and seeing that I was so fortunate for my family to come from Toledo out west and all the good things that were happening in Arizona. And I didn't think that Arizona had the reputation that it deserved nationally. I thought this is the best kept secret in the country. I wanted to be the chief spokesperson and chief salesperson for the state. And that's really what motivated me to do it, because I just thought it was such a wonderful place to be. And I think a lot of good things happen with growth. And that's really what I had done in my business career. I drove revenue, and I was naive when I made the decision to get into politics. I'd never been to Washington, D.C. I'd never been down to the state capitol. I just thought that we were in need of some leadership, and I also thought the state was suffering from a bit of an inferiority complex, looking at other places and thinking that they were better or that we couldn't be competitive. And my mindset was, why can't we be competitive? And I think we've demonstrated that we can compete or beat anybody in the nation.
So going back to your Cold Stone days, how old were you when you started?
On the franchising side of it, I was 33.
When and how did you make the decision? What drove you to say, we've got something here that can be a lot bigger than it is right now?
Well, I wanted to be in business for myself, and I was actually looking at other concepts, really good concepts. Things like Subway, which, they've got tens of thousands of stores all over the country. I actually was checking out Ben & Jerry's as well, because I love Chunky Monkey. Every time we went on vacation, I just thought they had the best packaged goods inside the store, and that wasn't available. But there was a guy here, Don Sutherland, who opened the first store at Southern and McClintock, and he was thinking of franchising. And I was with Procter & Gamble, but I was on the food service side of the business. That was what they called the stepchild division. Mm-hmm. It was a $1 billion division in a $30 billion company, but was all the stuff that Procter sold that wasn't in the grocery stores. So I was dealing with restaurants, distributors, hospitals, and service outlets. And I, of course, had franchise customers. And I saw who the good franchisors were and who the bad franchisors were. And there were people that wanted to open that as a franchise. So there was an investment in what turned out to be the first franchise beyond the licensing, which was at 83rd Avenue and the 101, which was a cotton field when we signed that lease. And that next 10 years, we built over 1,440 stores, all 50 states. Today it operates in 31 countries around the world, and it seems like just yesterday that we were in the office in Gilbert in shorts and T-shirts and, unloading compressors.
When did it dawn on you that you were this baron of business. I mean, you were kind of the standard for a lot of people in these franchises. When did you figure out that you went from, man, I hope this works, to people are modeling themselves after us?
It took a while. I'd been in the comfort of the corporate cocoon, and when I left Procter & Gamble, they made quite an effort to try to keep me there. And I wanted to do something. I wanted to come here, and I didn't want to chase my career all around the country. And in those days, the way to really achieve top-level management was to go to China for some time and build a brand over there. And, that may have sounded sexy. Our relationship with China was different back 30 years ago. But as I was getting to the point where we wanted to start a family, I thought, I don't want to raise kids in Shanghai or Beijing. So the choice was really Toledo, where I grew up, or Tempe, where I met Angela.
Right.
And so Tempe won. We came to Arizona, and I did look in those days. You read the paper, and the classified showed what jobs were available. There weren't a lot of corporations in town, but I was thinking, was it the right thing? I was second guessing a little bit on was it the right thing to leave P&G. I only suffered that maybe for 30 minutes on a Sunday as I looked through the classifieds. Luckily, there was no really good job out there, so I got up every morning. We focused on being the first to best locations and leading all competitors in unit development. And I had seen at Procter & Gamble, my brand was Folgers, and I was able to see what happened with, we won a lot of awards. We were able to really build that brand outside of the grocery store. And if you remember, it wasn't that long ago, people didn't go out and order a brand of coffee.
Right.
They just walked in a restaurant and said, I'll have a cup of coffee.
Sure.
So I was the one taking that off the grocery store shelves and talking to restaurateurs in Los Angeles if they want to do that. And this was the number one best-selling coffee in the world. It was an easy yes. And I had an objective in my first quarter to sell 40 accounts. I sold 400. And all of a sudden, I was taking on more responsibility than anyone in the company at my age. So I had this confidence that you could go into a commodity, which is what ice cream was. You could make it better in a super premium category. By that time, Ben & Jerry's and Haagen-Dazs had fled retail outlets and gone to the grocery stores. And we had Dairy Queen, Baskin-Robbins, and 3,300 TCBYs. So we really went out there and we took down those locations. We actually drafted behind Starbucks for a lot of it. Landlords love Starbucks. They light up a center in the morning. Cold Stone lit up centers in the evening. And there aren't many family-friendly things that light up centers in the evening. And that's why I think we were able to have such rapid growth. It was good timing, and it was a plan.
So that I just have to ask, you said Ben & Jerry's and Chunky Monkey, but Cold Stone, what's your favorite?
Well, I love all the chocolate. I'd say I love everything at Cold Stone, and believe it or not, Baskin-Robbins was 31 flavors.
Yeah.
And 31 flavors, it was one flavor for each day of the month.
Yeah.
And that was considered a lot. What Cold Stone did is basically exponential number of flavors because of the combinations. So I think that's what was really allowed people to customize and personalize their own ice cream. There were just three things that I was always in search of. I always thought the Chunky Monkey, the chocolate that Ben & Jerry's was a special combination. I always thought Baskin-Robbins had an incredible pistachio. Or I'm sorry, mint chocolate chip.
Yeah.
Mint chocolate chip. And then Friendly ice cream, which is back in the Midwest, they had pistachio. So we always have to sample competitors, but those are the ones I always got when we were traveling.
Didn't you have a concept in the stores? Don't they have a concept where guests make up a recipe and sometimes they end up on the wall?
For sure. We had those personalized recipes. We actually had a guy, Ray Karam, and he was our taste master. He was basically a food scientist.
Now that's a job. I mean, how
What
did
a
you get
job.
that job?
And he reveled in the job, too. And I still have a white coat, which is what he wore every day. It's a Ray Karam Taste Master with the Cold Stone logo. And we came up with a couple new flavors. Cotton candy was one that kids loved, and that was not a new flavor, but the cookie dough was.
Yeah.
It was the first new flavor introduced in ice cream since cookies and cream, and that was one of our top sellers. So that was a lot of fun. But basically, ice cream lovers kind of stick in the chocolate, vanilla, strawberry, spumoni type thing, and then of course the mix-ins and the candies, fruits, and nuts and toppings was where a lot of the secret was. But also the singing in the store, the culture that we had. I think we were the best best place in the country for teenagers to work. We wanted teenagers, and not teenagers that could work 40 hours a week, teenagers that could work 10 hours a week, and they were active in school and cared about their grades and had a social life. And they brought a lot of energy to the store. They started singing in the stores. Yeah. When the lines got long, people would tip. So not only would they make their hourly wage, but a lot of times on a Saturday or Sunday night, they'd leave with $40 or $50 in their pocket. So we really got the cream of the crop.
So let's take that forward to the public life, because you ran, and I don't know if this was planned ahead of time, but you won a statewide race. You became the state treasurer. Was it your business acumen and your business sense? What made that office attractive to you? Because it was a statewide, or because it was treasurer?
Well, I'd never been to Washington, D.C. I sold Cold Stone, and I went back on a YPO, Young Presidents Organization, educational trip. And I was really fascinated about how much was going on that I was unaware of, because I'd just been working since I was 16. And I had the bug to run for office. When I came back, I went and visited with Senator Kyle. I'd never met him, never written him a check. Man. Unbelievable. And he taught me a real lesson here. I thought I'd get 15 minutes with him. He gave me 90 minutes. He encouraged me to run for governor. He walked me around his office. He introduced me to the people that he was working with. He was soon to be retiring. And I wanted to be the governor. I wanted to run for governor, but there was no opening for governor. And if you remember, Dean Martin,
I do,
made a decision to primary Jan Brewer, who had ascended to the governor's office when Janet Napolitano left to be in Barack Obama's cabinet. Governor Brewer inherited a huge deficit, had to make very difficult decisions in the role of chief executive, and Dean Martin made the decision that he was going to primary her. And I think there were a couple other guys that did that too, John Munger, Buzz Mills, but it opened the treasurer's office. Yeah. And I had studied finance. I considered myself, of course, a businessman. It was an executive office, and I thought this would be a way to run for office, to serve the state, to see if I liked it, and to see if I could make a difference. I also thought it would be a way for me to get smart on the budget and policy, which I didn't know much about. And it really turned out to be true. The treasurer's position is an important position. I think we managed $13 billion in assets. We did the first portfolio review in the history of the office and did some different asset allocations. And it put me in a position, if you remember, I fought Prop 204. It was a 1 cent sales tax. They tried to, I thought, deceive the voters in some way. It was a temporary tax to get through that huge deficit that was inherited. And some folks put it out there as, we'll just continue it. Well, it was meant to be temporary. That's what the commitment was to the citizens. It does sound easy to just pay a penny that you're already paying. So it was polling very high, the tax increase. It was, I think, 65-35. I made the decision to challenge it and got out all over the state, just like I did when I was running for treasurer. But I had to try to persuade people that this was a bad idea, that it was unnecessary, and the state had the right resources. And we won on Election Day 65-35. So that gave me the confidence that, hey, you can get out, make your case, get in front of the people. And I wanted to do it on a larger policy set in the governor's office. And 2 years later, I did.
Did it teach you about campaigning? Because running for a district, whether it's in the Arizona House or Senate, or running for a district in the House of Representatives in D.C. is one thing. But to have to run as a senator or as a governor or as a treasurer, that's a statewide race. And you got to cross all four corners of the state. You're speaking to different groups of people. Did you learn a lot from that helped you run for governor?
Oh, you learn a ton. You learn a ton. It is very awkward the first time you do it. I remember the first event was at the Mauna Lucia. At the corner. It was just a Republican women's event, and I live not too far from there at Tatum and Lincoln, and I was thinking, I'm walking into this event. I could just go home. Why am I doing this? But I wanted to do it. I wanted to get involved in public policy. Like I said, I thought the state should be profiled a lot better than it was. And you walk in there and you start shaking hands. I'm Doug Ducey running for treasurer, and I had my opponents come up to me. And, a lot of these people in politics say they want newcomers and outsiders and business people. That's all baloney.
No,
they don't want any competition. But there were some nice ladies there who liked my background. They liked that I was a newcomer. They helped me along the way. And so that journey began. And so winning that treasurer's office, and you go to all 15 counties doing it, you meet people in every county, and there's leaders in every county, and there's, hecklers and people that want to, poke you in every county. But you do learn a lot about what's important, not only to the party, but to the people beyond the primary. So I enjoyed that very much, and I think it prepared me to run for governor uniquely. It was interesting, if you remember, Jeff Flake was the congressman from Mesa. Jeff Flake was kind of Tea Party before Tea Party. He had killed earmarks, if you remember.
And he used to put out that pork book later on where he talked about government waste.
Yeah. So he was very well known in conservative circles. He had led the Goldwater Institute. And we went up to Mojave County. I was sitting treasurer, and he was running for the Senate. And he came up and he said, "Can you introduce me to some of these people? I don't know anyone." And that's the difference between a statewide race and a district, is you're in every part of the state. And I noticed that too when I ran for governor. I had some really good competition. That was a tough primary field. But I think having been in those counties, to know what's important to those voters, to understand and respect the rural way of life, and to know that Maricopa County is not the be-all, end-all in this state, and there are 15 counties, and Maricopa is just one of it. One of them is the right way to position yourself if you do want to be governor of all the people.
So let's talk about that, the governor's office, because you talked about the economy and Governor Brewer. I've made the analogy on the air a number of times. Governor Brewer was like the emergency room doctor that had to stabilize the patient. She had to make really rough decisions to get the economy just to stay alive. When you came in, you were more like the specialist, the orthopedic surgeon that puts everything back together. Was it really that much of a plan when you were running, knowing that we need to diversify this economy? I use the phrase intentional growth. Was it intentional from day one?
It was intentional, but it was aspirational. I had some confidence not only that I could win an election, but that the product and the place that I was leading was a very special place. And I had looked at other places that had had success. And this is really this is a business practice called best practices. You look at other people that are doing things right. And if you remember when I was running for governor, I referenced Texas a lot. I mean, what does Texas have that we don't? I don't think they have anything. If anything, I think it's more beautiful here. It's a better quality of life, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Yet Texas had gone from an oil and gas state to a truly dynamic economy with everything under the sun being in Dallas and Houston. And listen, I've been to Dallas and Houston. I'd much rather live here. So I wanted to be the one to get in front of these decision makers, in front of these CEOs, and make the case. And when I was running, I got in front of Rick Perry, who was then the third-term governor of Texas. And he told me some of his secrets. He was planning to run for president at the time. So he basically gave me his playbook, and it's pretty simple. I mean, show up in the room. You'll differentiate your state immediately if the governor is there. Listen to what their needs are. Tell them what you can deliver. No special favors, but opportunity for all. And I had a special trick where I gave everybody my cell phone number. Nobody ever called it, but it was just kind of that care and attention that they're going to have. And then I'd say, how did your meeting go with Greg Abbott? Well, they hadn't got in front of Greg Abbott in Texas. Or how did your meeting go with Ron DeSantis, or before that Rick Scott in Florida, and they hadn't got in front of them. So I really carved that time out. Every state has an economic development effort. It's typically delegated to one person. We have the best person in the country here in Sandra Watson, and but I wanted to be her partner in that. And then I was also really fortunate with Michael Bidwell. Michael Bidwell was somebody that I didn't know that well before I ran for governor. I think he actually started out the race supporting someone else, but when he saw that vision, he was a Midwesterner as well. He grew up in a little bit different neighborhood in St. Louis than I did in Toledo, but he had relocated to Arizona as well and thought it was an incredible place. So I had the top business leader, I had the greatest Secretary of Commerce in the country, and then as governor, I was able to speak with real authority on what the state could do, and our economy's been transformed, and it was a blast.
And you being able to to parlay and use events like the Waste Management Phoenix Open being a Thunderbird, and when the Super Bowl is here, or the Fiesta Bowl championship games, a time when they're coming, those CEOs are coming here for a good time. That had to be a great advantage for you.
Oh, it's priceless. It's priceless. And it's also part of how I tried to woo Michael Bidwell. You know, whoever was going to be the next governor was going to be inaugurated in early January 2015. And the Super Bowl was 4 weeks later. So I kept talking about how we can use the Super Bowl to brand the state of Arizona, to really paint the canvas of what the state really is and show it off. And it is the biggest event anywhere. Yeah. So I think he liked hearing that. He wanted to be a partner in it. We had the Phoenix Open that was going on at the same time, which is the best